My parents gave my college fund to my golden child sister. Years later they came. 3 weeks after I signed the papers to buy my dream home, there was a knock on my front door. When I opened it, I froze. Standing there were the two people I hadn't spoken to in almost 9 years. My parents.
My mom looked exhausted.
My dad looked like he'd aged 20 years overnight. And the first thing my father said wasn't, "How have you been?" It wasn't, "We miss you."
No.
He looked me straight in the eyes and said, "You owe your sister another chance." I actually laughed, because they had already taken everything they could from me. My childhood, my trust, my future, even my college fund. What they didn't know was that the daughter they abandoned had become the only person who could save them. And this time, I was the one making the decisions. Childhood. People always say, parents love all their children equally. Maybe yours did. Mine didn't. I knew it before I was old enough to spell my own name. I was 6. My younger sister, Emily, had just turned 4. One Christmas morning, I unwrapped a small coloring book and a box of crayons. Emily opened a brand new electric Barbie dream house that took up half the living room. I remember staring at it, then looking at my mom. She smiled and said, "You're older. You understand." That sentence became the soundtrack of my childhood. Whenever Emily broke something, I apologized. Whenever Emily cried, I got punished. Whenever Emily wanted something, I was expected to give it to her. Because you're older. By middle school, I had stopped asking for things. Not because I didn't want them, because I already knew the answer.
No.
Unless Emily wanted the same thing. Then somehow, there was always money. One summer I spent 3 months mowing lawns, walking dogs, and babysitting just to buy myself a used bike. The night before I picked it up, Emily pointed at it in my garage. "I want that one."
My mom didn't even ask.
She simply looked at me and said, "You'll share." Share? I'd paid for every dollar of that bike. Emily rode it twice, scratched it, left it outside in the rain, then forgot about it forever. That was when I learned something important. Nothing I owned really belonged to me. High school. Things got worse in high school. Emily discovered something powerful. She didn't have to earn attention. She only had to cry. One afternoon, she walked into my room wearing my varsity jacket. I asked politely, "Can I have it back? I need it tomorrow." She threw it on the floor. Then she burst into tears. Within 30 seconds, my dad stormed upstairs. "What did you do to your sister?" I stood there completely confused. "I didn't do anything." Emily sobbed harder. Dad never even looked at me. He pointed toward my bedroom door. "You're grounded." I was grounded for asking for my own jacket back. That night I sat on my bed wondering something I'd never had the courage to ask before. Did my parents actually love me? Or was I just the extra kid they were legally responsible for? My escape plan. By 16, I had one dream. Leave. I didn't care where. Community college. University. Another state. Another planet. Anywhere but that house. So I worked. Every weekend. Every holiday. Every summer. While my friends went to the beach, I stocked grocery shelves. While Emily slept until noon, I worked double shifts at a diner. Every paycheck had one destination. College. I even taped a picture of my dream university inside my closet. Every morning before school, I'd look at it and whisper, "Just 2 more years." That picture became my reason to survive. The promise. On my 17th birthday, Dad surprised me. He actually smiled. "We need to show you something." For a second, I thought maybe things had changed. He pulled out a folder. Inside were bank statements. My mom smiled proudly. "We've been saving for your college since you were born." I couldn't believe it. There was almost $84,000 in the account. I stared at the numbers. My hands were shaking. For the first time in years, I felt seen. I actually hugged my parents, something I hadn't done in forever. That night, I cried. Not because I was sad, because I finally believed maybe they did love me. Maybe I'd been wrong all along. I had no idea That would become the cruelest lie they ever let me believe. Graduation day. Senior year flew by. I graduated near the top of my class. I earned acceptance into one of my dream universities. I still remember opening the acceptance email. I screamed so loudly the neighbors came outside to see what happened. Everything I'd worked for, every late-night shift, every missed vacation, every sacrifice. It finally meant something. I couldn't wait to tell my parents. That evening we sat around the dinner table. I placed the acceptance letter in front of them. My mom smiled. Dad nodded. Emily barely looked up from her phone. Then my father quietly said, "There's something we need to tell you." His voice was strangely calm. Too calm. He slid the same bank folder across the table. Except this time, it felt thinner. I opened it. The balance wasn't $84,000 anymore. It wasn't 50. It wasn't 20. It wasn't even 10. It was $217.43. I thought there had been a mistake. I looked at my dad, then my mom. Nobody said a word. Finally, my mother took a deep breath and whispered, "Your sister needed it more." I stared at the empty account, then at my parents, then at Emily, who still hadn't looked up from her phone. I asked one question. The answer they gave me changed the course of my entire life. "What do you mean she needed it more?" Later they came begrudging. $217.43. That was all that was left of my future. $84,000. Reduced to pocket change. I kept staring at the bank statement, waiting for someone to laugh and tell me it was some kind of cruel joke. Nobody did. Instead, my mom folded her hands on the table and quietly said, "Emily needed it more." I looked at my sister. She didn't look guilty. She didn't even look embarrassed. She looked bored, as if stealing my future was just another Tuesday. The truth. "What do you mean she needed it more?" I asked. Dad sighed. "You know Emily struggled after high school." I blinked. She never even applied to college. Mom nodded. She wanted to open a boutique with her friends. I actually thought I'd misheard her. "You gave her my college fund. For a clothing store?" Mom frowned. "Don't say it like that." "Like what?" "As if she's the bad guy." I laughed. Not because anything was funny, because it was the only thing stopping me from crying. "So, let me get this straight. I worked every weekend for 4 years. I turned down trips. I skipped prom because I couldn't afford the dress. I got accepted into my dream university. And you gave everything to Emily's business?" Dad slammed his hand on the table. "Enough. Your sister has dreams too." I looked him straight in the eye. "So did I." Silence. Not one of them had an answer. Walking away. That night, I packed one suitcase. Not because I had somewhere to go. Because I knew I couldn't stay. Mom watched me zip the bag. "You'll calm down." "No," I said. "I'll survive." Those were the last words I spoke inside that house. I left with less than $600 in my checking account. No college fund. No backup plan. No family. Starting from nothing. The next 2 years were brutal. I worked mornings at a coffee shop, afternoons delivering groceries, nights cleaning office buildings. Sometimes I slept 4 hours, sometimes less. Community college became my only option. Not because I wasn't smart enough, because it was all I could afford. Every semester felt like climbing a mountain with bricks tied to my back. There were nights I sat in my tiny apartment eating instant noodles, wondering if my parents had ever thought about me, or if they even cared. Then I'd remember something. Nobody was coming to save me, so I saved myself. The phone call. About 3 years later, my phone rang. It was Emily. The first time she'd called me since I left. I almost didn't answer. "Hello." Silence. Can you loan me $5,000? No apology. "No, how are you?" "Just money." I laughed. She sounded offended. "What's so funny?" "You." Click. That was the shortest conversation we'd ever had. The difference between us. While Emily waited for handouts, I kept building. I finished my degree, got hired by a software company, worked harder than anyone on my team, 5 years later, I was leading projects I never imagined I'd be trusted with. Then came promotions, bonuses, investments. Eventually, I started my own consulting company. It was an overnight success. It was thousands of ordinary days where I refused to quit. The same determination my parents had never noticed became the reason I succeeded. Meanwhile, I heard bits and pieces through relatives. Emily's boutique lasted 11 months. Her business partners walked away. She blamed everyone except herself. Then she tried online selling. That failed too. Then real estate. Then crypto. Then another life-changing opportunity. Each failure ended exactly the same. She expected someone else to pay the bill. Just like always. 9 years later, the moving truck had barely left my driveway when someone knocked on my front door. I opened it, and there they were.
Mom, Dad.
Older,
Tired.
smaller somehow. For a second, I almost felt sorry for them. Then Dad spoke. Your sister needs help.
Of course she did.
I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. Why are you here? Mom's eyes filled with tears. The bank is taking Emily's house. Dad added. She has medical bills, credit cards, everything. Then came the sentence I'd been waiting 9 years to hear. We don't have anyone else. The conversation. I asked one question. What happened to the $84,000? Nobody answered. What happened to the boutique? Silence. The real estate business? Nothing. The crypto investments? Dad looked at the ground. Finally, Mom whispered, we made mistakes. I nodded. Yes. You did. Dad stepped forward. We're asking you to forgive us.
No.
We're asking you to help your sister. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I said something I'd rehearsed in my head for years. You already chose which daughter mattered. Now live with that choice. One final surprise. I turned toward the front door. Mom started crying. Dad's voice cracked. You'd really let your own family suffer? I stopped. Without turning around, I answered.
No.
You did that. The silence behind me was louder than any argument we'd ever had. I walked inside, closed the door, locked it, and for the first time since I was 17, I felt completely free. Epilogue. A few months later, an aunt called. Emily had declared bankruptcy. My parents had sold their house to pay off part of her debts. They moved into a tiny apartment. People in the family finally understood the truth. Not because I told them, because my parents admitted it themselves. Years ago, they had taken one daughter's future to gamble on another's, and they lost both. Final reflection. People think karma is loud. It isn't. Sometimes karma is quiet. Sometimes it's simply living long enough to watch your own choices catch up with you. I didn't win because my parents lost. I won because I stopped waiting for people who never planned to choose me. The college fund they stole could have paid for my education. But the lessons I learned after they stole it built a life they could never take away. And if I could go back and change everything, I wouldn't. Because the girl who walked out of that house with one suitcase became the woman who never needed anyone's permission to succeed. If you've ever been treated like the less important child in your family, I hope this story reminds you of one thing. Your future isn't decided by how others value you. It's decided by what you do next. And if this story resonated with you, let me know in the comments. What would you have done in my place?